Dearest gentle reader,
It's Bridgerton week, everybody! Welcome to the Rom-Com Rescue Podcast, a brand new podcast where we bring the love and life lessons from your favorite rom-coms. I'm Kira Sabin. I'm a healthy dating educator, a certified coach, and a positive psychology practitioner. But more importantly, I spend my days teaching the skills and mindsets of dating.
and I'm Dr. Isabel Morley. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and an EFT certified couples therapist, and I help couples have the happiest, healthiest relationship possible. Join us weekly as we break down the best love lessons from your favorite rom-coms so we can all get into the best relationships possible, because we believe that we create our own happily ever afters.
Oh my God, everybody, we are so excited. If you are listening to this podcast, pause what you're doing and make sure you go check us out on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, because we are in full Bridgerton wear.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. There are tiaras. There are ridiculously mildly hot and uncomfortable dresses. But we're so excited. We are going to, over the next month, be breaking down all of the Bridgerton episodes 2 at a time. So we'll be doing 2 today, 3 and 4 in a couple of days. And then when the other ones come out in a month, we'll do those also. Now, before we get into the podcast today, we want to tell you that we are doing something special for Bridgerton Week. To get the word out about our podcast, we are doing a Bridgerton gift giveaway. And to enter, all you have to do is go to our site, romcomrescue.com, and there are multiple ways that you can enter the contest. Everything from answer a trivia question that I mentioned on this episode, to liking us on Instagram or Facebook, or leaving a review. Different actions get you different amount of entries. And then we will be drawing for the winner on May 25th. All you have to do is do one entry to be entered, but the more actions you do, the better chance you get to win the awesome Bridgerton prizes that even the biggest Bridgerton fans will love. We have a Bridgerton coloring book, a Bridgerton candle that smells like orange, just like Queen Charlotte loves to pick herself, to the Penelope and Colin relationship. And of course, you'll get to drink it in your very own Lady Whistledown mug. Head to romcomrescue.com/Bridgerton. Just a very quick rule just for the Bridgerton podcasts, which is there's just going to be limitations on the conversation because this is a historical time. Women did not have a ton of power. The power dynamics are already skewed from the beginning. So we can't necessarily be talking about partnerships and equal relationships very much because that wasn't really an option for women. But that is part of the storyline. So we just want to make sure that you know that's the space we'll be talking from today.
Which is incredibly important. We're going to accept the rules of the time, but still analyze these relationships to see how healthy or unhealthy they are and the messages they're sending, even for that period of time. And there's a lot to talk about.
So the question is, if we were debuting in the Ton this year, what would Lady Whistledown say about us? I'm clearly way above spinster age at this point. So she might be like, what are you doing?
We're both past our prime. Our best chance of getting a husband is because our previous husbands died and we're back on the marriage mart. Best case scenario.
Best case scenario. Although, and I'll be mentioning her a lot because she's my favorite character, but I think like Lady Danbury did it right.
What a woman. She is living her best life. She's having a positive impact in the world, and she's doing whatever she wants.
Whatever she wants. And both Isabel and I reacquainted ourselves to Bridgerton. So I actually watched all of them again. And it was a great reminder that I think that season 2 is a
dumpster fire. The worst. Antony, boo, hiss.
I mean, they are the most emotionally unavailable people I've ever seen. And at the end, I love when people basically, and this is a Mr. Darcy
Magically.
too, but just that
Mhm.
I hate you, but I love you. Love me forever. Right? Or I hate you. I hate your family. I hate like all that you are, but we should definitely have sex right now.
And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. I hate you too. Let's get married and be super happy together. And then suddenly they're super happy together.
Right.
Explain
Forever.
that to me. It doesn't make any sense. We all know I have strong feelings about Anthony in the first 2 seasons, that he's the living worst. So season 2, happy it's over. Season 3, way better.
I'm loving it already. So back to what would Lady Whistledown say about us? So what would she say about 18-year-old Isabel? Any ideas?
Oh, man. Best case scenario is that she would say, if I'm being true to my life, my older sisters are wonderful and accomplished and smart and made good matches. So I think she'd be like, Isabel has a chance. Her sisters have done well, and that would have improved my odds of getting a good match. I don't think I would have stood out necessarily. I think I would have been like middle of the road. I'll find someone. Fine.
Are you a bit of a Francesca? Should we say that already? Oh no. I gotta
Listen,
say, I'm a straight up Eloise all the way.
till the end of time.
Till the
Except,
end of
well,
time.
I want to be Eloise, but personality-wise, like how I would conform to society, I'd be Daphne. I'd be like trying to be the best and to be the perfect little debutante and get a proposal my first season. I hate that's me. I want to be Eloise. I would be Daphne.
It's okay. We're a work in progress. We're
Yeah.
all a Bridgerton work in progress. I definitely think that young Kira, she was feisty. She was a Spitfire. I would not be the diamond. That's for sure. Because I'd probably maybe fall over while I'm curtsying. That's not an impossibility. I remember the first season, I was actually tweeting while I was watching it. And the very first thing I said is, we can all talk about Daphne and the Duke all day long, but I am here for Eloise. And now I'm not loving Eloise this season right now. It is breaking my heart that they are fighting, her and Penelope, but we can get into that in just a second. So, all right, we got an Eloise and we've got a Daphne. Good to know. This is not necessarily surprising to me, I will say.
For me, neither, from your perspective. And you know what the great news is? We're sisters, and that's what really matters. And we're going to help each other through our first season out.
Absolutely. So let's just get into it. What were our first impressions of season 3? You got up right away and watching it. I was watching it by 10 a.m.
Yeah, my body woke me up earlier than I wanted, but it was perfect because then I got to dive into Bridgerton at 5 a.m., which is when everyone wants to watch Bridgerton.
Listen, there's worse things to do at 5 a.m., like be awake, but if you have to.
You might as well be watching Bridgerton.
Exactly.
I am loving this season so far. What stands out to me is it's just nice to know the characters and to have such familiarity with all of them. And I love the Bridgerton siblings together. I love their dynamics, and I feel like I'm glad they haven't cut short Bridgerton sibling time. This season is better than last season, too, which, although Anthony at first, his brief appearance was better. So I was like, okay, maybe he's not the worst of all time. But it's just, I'm so happy to be done with the Anthony-Kate storyline that I think I'm pretty easy to please for this season. How do you feel?
Is that what you're saying? You have a low bar? I agree, because I went back and I, A, forgot how much sex there was in season 1. B, forgot how little of sex there was in season 2. And we've been talking about Bridgerton now the last couple of days leading up to this. And somebody told me, because we said we were not Anthony fans. And somebody said he is 10 times worse in the books. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Possible?
Is it possible? I'm guessing it is. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I'm loving the start of the season. And for those of you guys, because you may not think about rom-coms all the time like we do, but this trope is friends to lovers. So friends to lovers is my favorite rom-com trope. That's what When Harry Met Sally is. That's what all of my favorites are, because I just think that friendship is such a basis for a good relationship. Danny's my best friend in the whole entire world. In fact, he's so excited about seeing me in my costume. So I will probably maybe even video him reacting because he'll be home by the time we're done recording. So that is fun. Already like this. It's fun. It's got a great vibe. Penelope is such a fun character. I love Nicola Coughlan, first of all. I don't know if you're a Dairy Girls fan. If anybody is listening and has not watched Dairy Girls on Netflix, it is a quick and easy watch, and it is literally one of the funniest shows I have ever seen in my life. I will probably rewatch it till the end of time. It just cheers me up on its rough days, and Nicola Coughlan is in that. She's fantastic. So I love her, and one of the other things I said is Colin has Gaston vibes when he first comes home.
That made me laugh so hard. He has super Gaston vibes. He had a real Gaston glow up in between season 2 and 3 with his Euro trip.
He really did. And it's interesting because all of the actors are a little bit older. They're not really 20, 21, 22 or that kind of thing. But the word I believe that Benedict used was sturdy. And I will tell you, sturdy has a new meaning for me now than it did before this. But yeah, he comes home, he's like undressing and and I'm like, oh shit, is this what we're doing? I'm like, this is what we're doing. Okay. What about you? What came up for you in first impressions?
If I'm being honest, my question for you is, why are the Bridgerton men such poor dogs? They cannot not have sex with random people all the time.
All the time.
It's the beginning of every season is one of them sleeping around with somebody they shouldn't be sleeping with or somebody they're not serious about. And I gotta say, I get it. And like part of it is for the entertainment value, the sex appeal, but it just makes them feel like very unserious men who aren't taking their lives and relationships very seriously because they're just dicking around.
Dicking around? Is that what you said?
That's right. You know what, Kira? And I don't regret it.
No, I have to say, whether this is true or not, and I'll tell you, the absolute ridiculous hypocrisy that men can put their dick anywhere in the early 1800s, and that a woman and possibly her family is ruined if she kisses someone or is even touched.
Alone. If she's alone with a man.
Alone with somebody. And then that we see like the Bridgerton men having orgies in every season. I get that's probably true to the time. Especially, let me tell you, watching these seasons over, I'm like, being a rich white man in London in the early 1800s.
With money.
Yeah. Oh,
with a title.
That's a good life, right? Oh, do I want to go to art school? Okay, maybe. Oh, should I take a wife this year? Maybe, because 1,000 girls are lining up, right? Exactly. But man, it really takes a little bit away from the love story that I'm supposed to believe by the end of this 8 episodes that he's going to fall for Penelope, because we all know that's what's happening here because there's books and everything else. I'm not spoiling that for anybody.
Pretty clear. There's a happy ending.
But we see him having a threesome and I'm like, how does everybody else feel about it? Tell us in the comments. How does everybody else feel about that? Because it just feels a little gross.
It's the men need to sow their wild oats before they can settle down, but women should stay pure until they find marriage. It's that messaging. And you're right, it was the time and we're acknowledging that, but they took it to the extreme.
There's a lot of things that we have changed for these books, for the TV show. Also, I will say, I do think it's a little interesting. So Francesca, they switched up the actress. But so far, like, I feel like her story is so
underdeveloped. It's not, there's not enough there. Yes.
Like, it's a bit of a snore. I'm not quite sure why they decided to, it's just not that interesting. It's okay if it's time for her debut, but so far they're not really giving her anything to work with. She's just nice. She plays piano all the time. That's what interests her, and good for her. But yeah, I'm like, what are we doing with it?
Her character is certainly underdeveloped. I don't understand. She's okay. I just want to find someone and be done with it. But then she makes very little effort to just find someone and be done with it. And she's pretty obsessed with the piano. But I agree. There's seemed like an ancillary, unnecessary storyline at this point because there's so much going on with all the other relationships.
Seriously.
Don't even need her.
Seriously. That's true. The last thing I want to say before we get to, I have a couple of fun Bridgerton questions for you. And for everybody who listens, if you guys want to come over and tell us your answers, we would love to hear them. But the last thing I will say, because I only watched till episode 2 so far, by the way, guys. I stopped myself from watching 3 and 4 for the pure fact that I thought I would get confused and spoil
Smart.
3 and
It's
4
smart.
all over this episode. Honestly, that's just the absolute truth. I've been really tired the last couple of days, but I will say that kiss at the end of episode 2, because I didn't necessarily see it coming, because once again, they can't really be alone. So they broke the rules there, but I was there for it. I replayed that 3 times. I'm not proud, but at noon
Own it.
yesterday when I was
Own it.
the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, I think I missed that a little bit. I wanted to see a little bit more of the reaction from him and just like that.
Mhm.
Then I watched the second time and then I'm like, no, I'm just going to enjoy it one more time. And I think that was at 3.
Maybe
but
once more just for the podcast, just so I'm sure I know what happened when we talk about it. Yeah, it was research. You were doing research.
listen,
thank you.
I do this for this podcast.
It's for everybody.
For you,
It's not
about
you're-
for the
I know.
listeners.
You give and you give.
So we did bring a couple fun questions that came up for me because this is the weird shit I think about that I have for Isabel. So number 1, if you were in the ton and a single eligible woman, which Bridgerton brother would you choose?
Oh, that's a different question than the one I thought you were going to ask, which is just as a viewer, which is your favorite. That
No.
changes things, Kira.
Who would you choose?
Easy. And it's actually the same answer as my first one, but I had to factor in a few things. It's Benedict, hands
Shit.
down. For you
Mine
too?
Mine too. Benedict all the way. He is
Handsome.
an artist.
Yes,
He is handsome as
emotional.
can be. You know,
No Viscount obligations taking up your time. You can go have
Right.
orgies at
Right.
artistic parties.
right.
Whatever you want.
I'm a Benedict girl.
Benedict.
I should have known this. Plus, he is just adorable.
handsome.
That actor. His name is Luke Thompson, I think, because there's Luke Newton and Luke
Which is
Thompson.
confusing.
And hello, because I have trivia. This is not gossip, but it is a little bit of tea that Benedict is dating one of the Featherington sisters
Featherington.
in real life.
You're blowing my mind right now. And you're
Pippa.
breaking
Is
my
it Pippa?
heart.
But they're dating in real life, and I thought that was adorable.
That's fantastic. I'm happy for them. That is the cutest thing ever.
And then I have to ask this, especially since you're a mom.
Yes.
And we see this a lot in historical, not even fiction, but fact, which is sometimes all of a sudden, an 8-year-old becomes the head of a house. So one of the things that we see in these first 2 episodes is the Mondriches, them finding out that all of a sudden they inherited it, but they didn't inherit it. Their 9-year-old son did. And he is now the head of the house. How would you feel about that as the parent and the adult? I am not a parent, so I wanted to ask you.
I can't even fathom. I mean, I assume that you just stay in charge, but it's that transition point that makes me worried. It's at age 14, does he get to actually be in charge? Because they get married really young because they don't live that long anyway. Do you have a teenager telling you what to do? I don't know what the rules are with that, but let me tell you, I wouldn't feel good about it. My daughter's in charge of the household. Things are being done very differently in a way that I don't think would be great. But we see with the Bridgertons, right? His dad dies, and Violet basically stays in charge until he decides to settle down and get married. And we see the transition happening now. So maybe
Right.
it's just a really long process.
I just think having your kid be the head of the house, and then also all of the staff looking to him to answer questions, and he's the one in charge, and they're kind of like, well, we understand you're his parents, but he's actually the one. I mean, I just think that's a mind fuck. I just think that is really
That's
hard.
hard.
And what kind of kid does that how are you developing a child, putting them into that position so young?
Guess what?
What?
That's how you create an Antony, though. That's how you
True that.
create,
True that.
right? Overly self-righteous, power going to his head, but abdicating responsibility and controlling people's lives and messing it up, but not admitting he's messing it up. That's how you make an Antony. And that's why we don't do it anymore. Antony is the reason why we changed inheritance laws since the Regency era. And that's a fact. And I want everyone listening to know that's an actual fact.
I love it. Bring in the facts, Dr.
Anthony.
Isabel Morley. All right, let's move on to what were our favorite life and love lessons from these first 2 episodes?
I think I would start with, I loved the initial lesson that to find a match, to find a person, you have to leave the fantasy. And we see Penelope face that. Like, you can keep reading books and you can keep watching people meet each other and fall in love. You have to participate. You have to actually go into the real world and put yourself out there if you yourself are going to find it. And I think this is a lot of what you talk about with
It is.
dating.
I was like, hello, my clients who listen to this. Are you listening? Because it's true. I think one of the things that has happened is that online dating, as well as just we now think we can hack the system and not have to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. And I think you're absolutely right. Penelope's just realized that if she's going to do this, if she's going to find a match, she's going to have to actively try. She's going to have to learn some things. She's going to have to maybe change up what she's doing. And I do think that we have really unhealthy views and mindsets about love and about dating and about relationships. And we get into this place where if I don't know how to do it by this age or this date, or if I'm just bad at this, then maybe I just should be single for the rest of my life. Or maybe I'm just the person who's going to have a terrible relationship for the rest of my life. And I just think that is, besides being that an actual fixed mindset, it's an unhealthy and unhelpful mindset and not true, because we can absolutely learn skills. We can absolutely learn how to have better conversations, what kind of questions to ask to learn about people and their values and who they are. And sometimes people are like, you're so outgoing. And I'm like, I'm the first person to say I can have like a good conversation with anybody, but that's not because of my personality. I used to work on cruise ships and I was expected to every cruise put on formal wear and go mingle with guests for 2 hours.
Oh,
I had to
God.
walk up to people and start conversations. Every time I walked by somebody, I had to say hello and make eye contact. I was 22 years old when I started on cruise ships, so I was really young, just out of college. It was so hard. I did not feel like a shy person, but that never feels good. But I got good at it, and those skills have really helped me in my life, in my business, in my relationships. And I do think that we get really stuck in the some people get to have this and other people don't. And I do love this story because whether history or sometimes even today, we think people like Penelope don't get to have this.
And I think she's a part of the reason why she hasn't had it is because she has those same limiting beliefs.
Right.
We know that's because her mother has basically told her, you won't find anybody, so forget about it, right? That's been the messaging every season. So she's obviously internalized that, although we see her trying to break out of it. And what you're describing is exactly right. You put yourself in uncomfortable positions to learn new skills and grow and strengthen a muscle that you don't already have. And she's so used to watching and observing and writing about people's romances, but it's a very different thing to live it. And I think it's so interesting because I had a different take on the Colin teaching her to flirt, but I loved your response to me. So basically I said, a love lesson that I would like to point out is that authentic flirting and chemistry can't be forced. And I think we see that there's just, if it's there or it's not. We see it's there with Colin and Penelope. It's not there with a lot of other suitors. And that this Colin's approach of just being, the point I'm making with this is Colin teaching her to flirt, I think is helpful only to a degree. I think he's teaching her what he's learned, which is how to be appealing to everybody, how to charm people. And that's not being authentic. That's not actually revealing who he is to people. So he's getting along with everyone and having all the women want to talk to him because they feel good when they're with him because he's making them feel good, giving them attention. But he's not actually authentically connecting with them and revealing himself. And so when I pointed that out and your response was, yes, but flirting can be taught, I thought that was such a good additional point to make, that there's many components to flirting and connecting with people. And I'm making it sound much more difficult than it actually is. It's not that hard to flirt with people.
But you know what, though? I think it really is for a lot of people. And what's really interesting is one of the conversations I've been having just the last couple of years of doing this is when you are meeting people or going on dates, are you authentically connecting with people or are you trying to win them over? And as a culture, we teach people to win people over. You put your best foot forward. You make sure you don't show all your weird shit on the first couple, all of these things. And now, do I think that there is effective timing? And sometimes when we share with people and who should get to hear our stories and our stuff and everything else. But I will tell you, a couple of years ago, I just put like a list together of the different steps it takes to really get into a relationship. And there's a lot of different steps. And some people get stuck in who they choose, and other people get stuck in just creating that authentic connection. And what I do know is what we're seeing here exactly is that Polin is winning people over. He is making people feel good. He's making women feel seen and pretty and flattered and all of the things. But ultimately, that only goes so far. Yeah. After a while, there has to be an authentic connection, or it just doesn't go anywhere. And that's also why we see a lot of times in real life, people confusing love bombing, which I know that you recently wrote about, but confusing love bombing and confusing people winning them over, and almost even sometimes not even knowing they're doing it, manipulating the situation to get you to like them, but there's not an actual connection. And a lot of times people can feel very confused by that. Please weigh in.
Sociopaths and narcissists are great at winning people over, right? That is a skill set you can develop, but it's not authentic. It's not real. There's nothing behind it. It's a very fine line. I admit it can be difficult to assess because we all do manipulate people in a non-malicious way, right? Like I want people to like me, so I interact with them intentionally to get them to like me without trying to gain power and control over them. But yes, there's definitely being likable and making people feel good, and then actually genuinely showing who you are and connecting with people. And Colin's good at the former, and I think we're going to see Penelope teach him more how to be the latter. Ironically, since she has a secret identity that we have to talk about.
No, and it is interesting. And I will say, because I love to do a little research, and I'll be doing a little research on each one of these. I'm not dropping everything all at once. But one of the things that I didn't know, and I think I might actually, although there's no fairy smut, I may actually start reading these because I do want to know how the books are different and that kind of thing. But in the books, so this book is actually a little bit later, and in the books, Penelope is like 26 or 27. So she is considered at that point, this is an actual spinster. People have given up on her by that book, right? So it wasn't just her third year on the marriage mart. And then he is actually 33 in the book. So he's quite a bit older. So that's even different. More interesting. They're older. He's been traveling and sowing his wild oats, in my understanding. But this was unexpected because she was truly considered at 26 or 27, just like Kate was, off the market. Like she was a spinster. Like, yeah, put her out to pasture. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you read our shared favorite quote from the episodes?
My favorite I had to move it up to the best love lessons because they said this, and I love when I hear great quotes like this. Living for the estimation of others is a trap. Once you break free, the world opens up. I love it. Go, Polin.
Yes.
Go, Polin. Sturdy and smart, that boy.
That's right. Well, this is what a Euro trip can do for you. If you go to Italy and you go to Greece, you find all the answers, Kira. That's why
you have orgies all over the place. The wisdom just seeps in through vaginas.
You break free and the world opens up. The legs open up, the world opens up.
Oh, shit. That's hilarious.
I love that we both wrote this quote down, though, and loved it because it is exactly right. And Penelope has not given up living for the estimation of others, despite her sort of shirking of pretending she doesn't care. We know she cares. And
she loves that people love Lady Whistledown. Whether they kind of love to hate her, there is a part of her that is being served by that attention. Yeah. Whether she is getting it directly or not. Yeah. So that is whether she wants to pretend that she doesn't care what others think. I don't believe that to be true. What do we think? Any other of your favorite love lessons?
This is I don't know if this is a love lesson, but people should be educated about sex and what sex is and how to make it pleasurable. And although it happens too late, Lady Featherington steps up and starts to try to teach her daughters how to enjoy sex before realizing that they're actually just kissing. having sex at all.
And
This is why sex education is so important.
I wrote this was hilarious and beyond worrisome. But we see Daphne not knowing how to have sex. This is a common theme here of just people going, wait, where does what go? And when they're like, insert what and where, I was like, oh my God.
Oh. But
Help
I like
these
that
poor girls.
because the men didn't know too. The men were kept in the dark too, and I that their husbands hadn't been educated since the women apparently can't know what happens or they'll depurify
Well, clearly they're not
themselves.
having the orgies of the Bridgerton men. So
Clearly not. Clearly
Clearly not.
All right.
What are our worst love lessons?
I mentioned Colin's sort of empty flattery and charm. That's just surface level and not authentic, and he's indiscriminate in how he uses it. He's not actually picking people he wants to get closer to. He's just enjoying the attention of being the it guy. Let's talk about privacy. The irony.
Yes.
Penelope obviously does not value other people's privacy. As we know, she's Lady Whistledown and she says whatever she wants about everyone. But seeing her read Colin's diary when she had the opportunity to stop herself and then go back and read more, that was a huge violation
Agreed.
of trust
Boundary.
and privacy.
Yeah.
Big boundary violation.
And one of the things that I actually said on here is that we see Penelope at this point where she's frustrated, she's disappointed. I think she hid that she wanted a suitor from Eloise because Eloise was so against it. But we see Penelope want this, but we also see that Penelope has created her own rules for herself. She plays a little bit of a victim. She's a little bit of a survivor in this situation as the wallflower. So to me, she's moving through this world a little differently than the average woman of means during that time. So just not only the fact that she Lady Whistledown and hiding that from the majority of the population, this, reading Colin's journal, like I kind of think that she is at a place where she thinks she can get away with shit that she should not get away with. And not only that, those behaviors aren't going to create connection.
No, he gets furious, right? He walks in and finds
And he has
her.
every right to be.
He does have every right. And you're right. She's operating outside of society's laws. And you can understand why. Society has not been kind to her. But there are still lines to cross, especially with people that you care about and want to maintain even a friendship with. So that was a really big mistake Penelope made. A lot of the messaging in these episodes is follow the rules of the parties. We hear Benedict, our favorite, most handsome Bridgerton man, saying,
he is so handsome.
Follow all the rules if you're single. You want to find somebody, get married, and then, quote unquote, you're free. Then you're free to live your life. You can behave however you want at parties. You're outside of your parents' home. And I wanted to know your thoughts on that message.
I wrote right next to it, this made me side-eye because marriage was not freeing for women. And maybe it was free to women of means, but not the majority of the population. We saw in season 1 when Anthony is, I guess we'll use the word dating Sienna, the opera singer, because she was not a woman of means. She was a woman of work, or he couldn't actually be with her. So I don't think anything was freeing. Maybe for men. Because at that point, then they have somebody at home taking care of things. They have somebody bringing in the heirs so that their bloodline doesn't lose their property and their titles. Yeah. Nothing was free for women in 1813 or whenever this was set, period. It's interesting because I think that there is something about just romance novels and period pieces that bring out this whole wanting to be courted, wanting to dance at a ball, wanting to dress up. And as somebody who's dressed up ridiculously as we speak, I had totally fun doing this morning, right? I've been planning this for a couple of days. Isabel and I said we weren't going to show each other, so you guys will have to look for our reveal video to each other. But I don't want to go back to a time where I don't get to choose the person that I want to be with, that I don't get to have a partnership. We want one part of that, but we don't want the 97% that's the rest, which is zero rights. You could be... not soon before this, you could be beheaded if you were not able to have children, if you couldn't bear children.
And listen, this brings us back to the children point. The idea of being free is that you can then be free to bear children and produce wonderful heirs for your husband. And let me tell you, the idea of these women with no modern medicine popping out babies and surviving is
Right.
laughable. What's the numbers? 80% of them might die in childbirth, right?
Yeah.
The kids are going to die left and right. This was a terrible time. It still is. Women still are really at high risk when they give birth. All of my friends, if there had not been modern medicine, may not have survived giving birth to their children. So it's crazy to me that they're like, I'm scared. It might hurt. And I'm like, I'd be a lot more scared. If you knew what was coming for you, you would not think that marriage was so freeing. It might be freeing in the way that you don't want.
And the thing is that without birth control, you kept having children. That's why we have families of 12, 13, 14, 15. Women kept having kids until they could not have them anymore. But we see the Duke's mother in season 1 die
Yes.
from childbirth. We
Mhm.
see in season 2, Lady Bridgerton, them
Nearly.
possibly looking at whether or not she lives or Hyacinth lives at that juncture, and how she wasn't able to weigh in on that decision. It was her son,
Horrifying.
who I think we're supposed to think is maybe late teens, or I think Anthony's pretty young during
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
when his father dies. So yeah,
Dark times.
there was not a lot of freeing. And I think that unfortunately, the storyline of Lady Danbury of marrying somebody much older, and boy, those scenes of her having
Oh,
sex
man.
are
Brutal.
brutal and jarring, but I think probably very realistic to the time.
Yeah.
Women's pleasure wasn't really a thing. They didn't even think women could have pleasure back then. Women
Except
were
for
there.
Lady Featherington. She shows up. I have respect because she doesn't help her daughters out at all, really, except for she's, let me tell you how to enjoy this.
She's such a character. You gotta love to hate Lady Featherington, but she's a survivor.
She's
You gotta
doing
say
it.
that. She's
She-
getting it done.
Nothing but respect.
Some of the not great love lessons that I thought about. And I will say, for as much as I like Ruth Gemmell, who is Lady Bridgerton, Violet Bridgerton,
Yes.
I love her as an
Ooh.
actress. In fact, she was in a very classic 90s rom-com with Colin Firth that became an American version with Drew Barrymore and Jimmy Fallon. Who knows? Yes, who knows? I'm going to leave that as a trivia question for everybody. Who knows what movie that is? Because it was originally done about soccer / British football, or football to the rest of the world, and then came over and they redid it here in the States with Drew Barrymore and Jimmy Fallon. My rom-com knowledge runs deep.
Yeah, it does.
It
I'm
runs
impressed.
deep.
I'm-
But I will say this, for as much as I love her, and I think she's a beautiful woman, and I think she's a great actress, Lady Bridgerton
Ooh.
is a big part of the problem for me. Her constant, not that Anthony didn't need reeling in a little bit, but the fact that I think Daphne's response in season 1 to, you did not prepare me how to be a woman and a wife.
Yes.
And I think that was absolutely true. And her constant, but is
Marry
it a
for
love
love.
match?
Turn
Like,
down anybody. Find
right,
love.
exactly. And how wonderful that the Bridgertons are of such wealth and status that they can.
afford to.
Yeah, I always say about the past is love was for the poor, because you married for
Yes.
connections, for status. And Bridgerton is a fictional story, historical fiction, but women would not really
No.
probably get to weigh in that much. It was
No.
for the family. It was for what was the best positioning, status, money, dowry, all of it. Women did not, marrying for love. It's Bridgerton. It's
It
not
is.
necessarily real.
But also, she stomps all over her children's autonomy here. Do I think it's right that Anthony was just going to make a checklist for his wife and pick the person who best fit it to be his Viscount? It's not how I would do it, but that's fine. That's his choice. He can pick the good enough person who meets his criteria, and if that person's willing, fine. That's how marriages were made, right? If Francesca wants to go out there and find some nice enough lord and call it a day, that's her prerogative, and Violet pushes them in this idealistic way as if they're going to find a love match, which they may not, or their love match might marry somebody else. Sorry, I'm getting heated about this now. Might
can see
marry
that.
somebody else because it's a better social situation or financial situation their family might force them to.
We can call it what we want. And let me tell you, Kate Sharma, who he ends up
Mhm.
with, stunning. I'm like, I
Oh.
love that we love to think that Simone Ashley is nothing less than stunning.
Drop
Like,
dead.
she's the
Mhm.
spinster, right? Exactly. police. But we can say that Edwina was probably a better match for him. We can say that somebody
Prince
with
Friedrich.
calm and consistency was probably a better match in the long term. Now, not in our romance heads, but ultimately relationship wise, somebody who was calmer. She actually listened. She actually was bringing out great things.
Mhm.
Him and Kate just fought all the time and had like heat. But how long does that heat last if you don't know how to get along with your actual partner once that all dies down?
Then what?
And for that matter, you're absolutely right. The prince
Oh, but
in season 1,
I loved him.
totally the better match. We can
in
listen.
every way, and maybe
I
like
love
the,
me some Duke, right? We can all love the Duke. We can all
I don't
love
love the
that
Duke.
whole fake dating. They do all the tropes. But we even see Daphne go, I am now part of this situation with the Duke, and I'm walking away from this really lovely
good guy.
prince
Mhm.
who would have probably offered her a great existence.
I think a better life. I think her and the Duke, I mean, they had the chemistry and passion, but her and
I
the
think
prince
we are
were
losing people on this podcast because we're like, don't set them up with the people in the books. But we're
it's
also talking about
realistic.
realistic, right?
Bingo.
That's why we're here.
Yes.
The prince and Edwina would have maybe been better matches. Now, that's
Yes.
not who we're rooting for because we want the drama and the
Yes.
heat and the sparks and the chemistry. But all that goes to shit when you don't like your partner 2 years in.
And that's, I think the takeaway maybe is that Violet's obsession with love matches feels very close to soulmates. She doesn't say
Which,
that
you know,
word.
I love that word.
Yeah.
I do not love that word, everybody. I'm not a
Nobody
soulmate
mistake-
fan.
It just feels like she's promoting that idea that there is this like one perfect fit person, and she wants her children to hold out for that person.
But is it your love match?
There's
But
a lot
is it
of
your
lo-
love match? I don't know, Violet, because maybe you got to have a love match, but let's look at Lady Danbury. That was not a love match.
No.
And the other thing that Lady Bridgerton says is practicality is the opposite of love. And I'm
That's
like,
not
but
true.
is it?
Not true.
And then I wrote, this is the bullshit I hate. Because it is. Because the thing is that I realize that we love and we love to feel the extreme emotions. Man, I love a swoon. I can tell you amazing moments like in my life where I'm a little drunk and kissing somebody fantastic, right? I look back at those and they are lovely, but they are not my relationship and they were not love.
Yeah.
And love exists in consistency and trust and kindness. So the fact that when somebody says to Francesca, what are you looking for? And she goes, somebody kind. I'm like, you know what? That's a good fucking answer, Francesca.
Good for you, girlfriend.
Yeah, because Daphne went through hell and back thinking first he hated her, then he didn't want to marry her, then he had to marry her. And then they hate each other because she thinks he can't have kids or she's upset. And then she just finds out he's withholding.
He can have kids.
Yeah,
He's
he can have
withholding
kids.
his sperm.
And
Yeah.
so really up until that last half an hour of that season, it's not fun. And I can imagine that Daphne was probably at some point going, maybe the
Shit.
prince was not a terrible idea.
And maybe the Duke could have found
And that's
somebody who would have been all right not having kids with him and who would have totally accepted that life, and he wouldn't have had to break his terrible vow to his father. There's a world in which there were better matches for them. It wasn't the
Absolutely.
love match, but
Yeah, because would I tell my clients to definitely date somebody that they have extreme chemistry with who does not want the same future as them? Fuck no, right? I would never say that. I would never say what you really want kids in a family and that is one of your main values and you're just
Give it up.
hoping that the person is going to change their mind or you're going to talk them into it.
do that.
The last worst love lesson that I want to share is that I just think that Colin, in these first couple episodes where Penelope calls him out that I heard you say that you would never court me, it hurt my feelings. And he does this, I'm not the same as last season. I'm not the same man. I look forward to seeing you. I look for you. But it feels like it's because he loves her adoration, her attention. It doesn't feel like,
Her.
you know what I mean? It doesn't
Yes.
feel like the connection. You make me feel good.
Yes, that is literally what he says. It's like, I feel great when I'm with you, blah, blah, you make me, yeah.
Right. Do
Which
you
is-
feel great when I'm with you? Does he ever say that? No, he does not.
Yeah.
He does not. What are some of our favorite moments from these first episodes? And I'm just going to start it off because I'm going to admit something right now that is not great. And I'm
What?
just going to say it.
Oh my God.
I love a makeover.
Oh my
I love a
God.
makeover.
That's the
I
first
wish I
thing
didn't.
have. I know.
But I love Penelope's glow up. Me too. And I don't think that people necessarily need a new look to find love. But I do love when I see that it helps make somebody feel more confident.
Yeah.
When somebody feels stronger in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody feels better in who they are and what they're putting out there. Then I love that.
And that was the thing for Penelope, is that she's taking control too. She's just been doing whatever her
Like
mom
she chose
tells her.
this.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
she,
And
like,
that's why it felt great for
publicly-
me.
Yeah. And
Right.
not like her secret lady Whistledown, I'm going to assert my independence and do something for myself. This was for the whole world to see. I'm taking control of how I present myself. I hate these ugly citrus colored dresses. They're out the door. And it was nice to see that agency even more than the new look.
I agree. I just loved it. And I love it for her. And I've done a lot of watching of interviews with Nicola and Luke and things like that. And just, I will tell you quickly and early that 6 people made Penelope's dresses this season. 6 people were in charge of making her dresses.
Wow. The costume design for this show is
incredible.
top-notch. Absolutely.
Is incredible.
Cressida's hair.
Absolutely.
Every scene. Cressida's hair. I don't
Oh
understand
my
it.
gosh.
So
I don't know what's happening, but I love it. Even though I don't love Cressida. What do we think about Cressida
she's
and Eloise in that moment, though, where she says, you were not careful,
yes.
right?
You take a
With,
look in the looking
yeah,
glass.
take a look at yourself in the mirror.
She's right. And listen, I have empathy for Cressida because although we've seen the worst of her, this is a brutal, cutthroat marriage smart. You have got to get in there.
Sure.
She almost had a prince, and Daphne came in, ruined it for her, and then married somebody else. She's been through the ringer. She just wants to get married to some guy who she doesn't hate. And she's showing up for Eloise as a better friend. She's still cruel, right? We see her be cruel to Penelope, but I liked that Eloise had to do a little self-reflection because she was the reason that rumor got out. It was her fault.
Here's what I think is interesting as I completely look deeper into these characters than they even want us to. But there is something to be said of Eloise basically saying, I hate society. I hate this whole dance. I hate all of this. But you put her with these group of women and she's trying to impress them. She's trying to be entertaining.
Make them laugh.
And she is just like the rest of us
And
on
that's
some
okay.
level wanting to belong.
Yeah.
But you can't do that by tearing down other people or not well. That's for sure.
And if we're being honest, Penelope tears people down for her own self-esteem and for her own status and others' entertainment. But as I tell my couples all the time, bad behavior does not justify bad behavior. Penelope might be behaving badly by writing cruel things about people. It doesn't justify Eloise being cruel to her in response.
Let's do a couple fun facts and trivia that I found. Now, stuff is just starting to come out because, guys, we're doing this literally within 24 hours of it coming out. So when Nicola was asked if she would rather have a period era boyfriend over a modern day one, her answer to me was hilarious because it's exactly what I think, which is she says, I think nowadays they smell better. That's what I always think about the past. We think of it as so romantic and lovely, but there was no personal hygiene, and that's absolutely true. And in fact, major cities like London back then, people peed and pooped right in the street. It was not a beautiful time. Even if you were wealthy, you did not bathe on a daily basis. The biggest thing I've always heard about, if you went back in time, what would you think? And they always say it smells way worse than you think it's going to.
But see, this is where I would shine. I have no sense of smell. I would be undeterred. I wouldn't care. I'm ready to go.
You're made for that era. You're absolutely right. Next, the show, when they were thinking about doing it, was first conceived as an epic war drama.
Oh,
so
wow,
they were going to take
different.
the Bridgerton novels and turn it into a war drama, but then they decided later to make it faithful to the source material. But I just thought that was super interesting. And then here's one of the interesting things that I will say, as much as I don't love Anthony. But Jonathan Bailey, who plays Anthony,
He's great.
is adorable. And I loved learning that him and Kate started giving each other trinkets all the time last season. And it started with him giving her flowers, and then they would go back and forth giving gifts. And he actually, at the end of their series, gave her like a really lovely gift to thank her for doing this with him. And they've been friends ever since. I like hearing that because as much as I don't like Antony's character, I love that they're so close in real life. And it's nice to see that they've given him a little bit of humanity this season with Kate and things like that. Ooh. And we actually shared this, but I do want to say that Penelope, aka Nicola Coughlan, said that she told everybody she wanted to be all the naked because she's worked on looking as good and being beautiful. And she said to say fuck you to all the body shamers because she's not necessarily a size 0 or 2. And I fucking love that for her. I love it. So she asked for a PG version for her family, but I do believe we're gonna see some real raunchy good stuff coming up. And as a fellow woman, I would not even say that she is plus size on any level, maybe in Hollywood, but I just love that, and I'm glad that she's willing to do that for all of us out here,
everybody
who are looking for love or have love and are plus size. And the last fact I wanted to share is that they actually, of course, do and record these in real castles with actual real furniture from the time. So the directors and the prop masters and everybody, there's strict rules about what you can touch and what you can't. And even during sex scenes, they kept saying things, can you please go easy on the bed? Because this is actually old furniture and they were afraid it was going to break. And I do believe we will see that supposedly some furniture was broken while recording this with Nicola and Luke. So very interesting. Just a little bit of the trivia. Any positive takeaways from these 2 episodes? I think that my biggest takeaway, and I'm just going to say it early, is how this is almost normal. But a couple of years ago, this casting was shocking and new and exciting. And within a couple of years, this has become normal. You don't know this because why would you? But looking at rom-coms as much as I do, I actually remember reading an article about Hitch, but that actually Eva Mendes, who is, I believe she's Cuban, but that they would not hire a white actress because he was a black man. And this is in 2005.
That is horrific to hear.
Right. I think it's 2005. But I remember reading that and going, wow. So whatever we want to think about Bridgerton, it is changing things quietly. And go fucking Shonda, man. I am a Shonda fan because she has been doing diverse casting since day one. And she is quietly changing our thoughts, our mindsets, and our landscape. And I love it. I love it. And so to me, I will always be a Bridgerton fan.
I think the positive takeaway from the first 2 episodes for me is be brave. The bravery of putting yourself out there, of trying new things, of learning how to talk to people and learning how to flirt, learning how to be authentic. It really takes courage, but if you want to find someone, it is what you have to do. So I thought it was really lovely to see everyone in their own way put themselves out there for love.
Huzzah! Isabel, I could not have said that better because that's the one thing I believe is that all of love and dating relationships, we can learn how to do it better. We can learn how to have better conversations, how to fight fair, how to talk in a way to be heard and listen in a way that makes our partners feel heard. There are so many great skills and mindsets that we can learn. And just that if you're not happy with where you're at,
work on
you're
it.
not a tree. Get change. Find somebody to help you. Unfortunately, I know for me, there was just a point where somewhere in my late 20s and early 30s, I started gaining weight and I just gave up on love and dating and everything else. And I won't go deeply into it, but watching my dad pass away was actually a huge crux in me going, I want this. What am I going to have to actually do and work on and change to make it happen for me? And I worked on it. I really did. And when I met Danny about 10 months later, I'm not going to say it was all easy because I don't think ever building a relationship is easy. but I was way more ready, and I did the hard things to make a relationship wonderful. So I do think that sometimes, just like Penelope, that if I want this, I'm gonna have to get it done. And good for her, because
And
we can get it done.
that everyone deserves that love, no matter what size you are, no matter what age you are,
Absolutely.
no matter your family situation. Everybody deserves to go out there and find a wonderful person to be with. And I won't say love match, a wonderful person to be with.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because here's what I do know in the work that I do. I meet people every day of all ages, shapes, sizes, getting into beautiful relationships.
Yeah.
We don't always see it in the media. And that's why, even though, once again, I don't necessarily think of Nicola Coughlan as a plus size person, just the fact that she even has a little bit bigger body is exciting for me to be able to see that, because we don't give those people love stories very often. And I will continue to put myself out and my relationship with Danny, because I want people to know that you can be plus sized and you can also be loved, deeply fucking loved. And that's my goal for all of us. That's it for today.
If you liked this, subscribe or follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast platform.
And if you loved it, and we sure hope you did, please leave us a review. It helps us get the word out about this brand new podcast. And remember, you can get resources, show notes, and join the Rom-Com Rescue community at romcomrescue.com. We'll be back in just a couple of days for
Bridgerton episodes 3 and 4.
Make sure you head over to romcomrescue.com to join our giveaway. You definitely want to win this Bridgerton gift basket. It is amazing.
The best. I want to win it.
All right, guys.
Until next week, create your own happily ever after, and remember, living for the estimation of others is a trap. Once you break free, the world opens up.